right, we're going to get started right now. Welcome, everybody. Today, I'm going to share some knowledge with you in relation to Kubernetes. I've been working with Kubernetes for a long time. I have a show or a series that I do on YouTube that involves fixing broken Kubernetes clusters. And I want to take this opportunity to spend a bit of time with you and share some of the lessons learned from fixing these clusters. The title was previously fixing 50 plus broken clusters, but I think now we're closer to the 120 mark. So hopefully some interesting things ahead. If you're not familiar with me, my name is David. I am an engineer and developer advocate. I am based in Glasgow, Scotland, although currently I am in Oslo for NDC Oslo conference where I am speaking tomorrow morning. I'm the founder at the Rock Code Academy. This is my YouTube channel that focuses on producing senior and advanced Kubernetes and cloud native educational content. And I am a founder of a Kubernetes conference called KubeHuddle, which is in just a few days in Scotland's capital, Edinburgh. And I always say that my mission is to help the world with cloud native microservices and Kubernetes. Kubernetes is hard. Please do not feel disheartened if you're new to Kubernetes, or even if you've been doing it for a while and you find it difficult. It is difficult. Kubernetes is a distributed system for running distributed systems. It's inherently complex, but hopefully we can make people's lives a little bit easier along the way. Now, I mentioned that I have a show, and it's called Clustered, not Cluster D, but Clustered. And the whole premise of the show started as a bit of a gamble, I guess. I was feeling maybe overly confident a couple of years ago and thought, I know Kubernetes pretty well. And, there's certifications from the CNCF, such as the CKA, the CKAD, and the CKS. And people really struggle to pass these certifications because they are hands-on tests. They're not multiple choice, although some of the questions are multiple choice. They actually require you to type commands into a terminal and fix something with a Kubernetes cluster. And I wanted to make people's lives easier for passing these certifications. And I thought, well, why don't I spin up some bare metal Kubernetes clusters, give them to people? I know a lot of people in the Kubernetes community. I've been in this community for many years now. So we tried it. I spun up 2 clusters, gave them some prominent members in the community and said, do whatever you want. Don't tell me. That's the only rule. And it was interesting, to say the least. So what I found is that people like to break clusters in a wide variety of ways. And the way that we debug them, I find really interesting, because even if multiple people break the cluster in the same way, episodes apart, the debugging is never the same. And that's because we are the humans doing the debugging, and our thought process, as much as we'd like it to be consistent and linear, just doesn't work that way. So clusters is a really good way to see how people think and how people handle these situations when things go wrong. And it's really simple, really. All you need to do is upgrade the image on a deployment. I see that someone raised their hand. Please feel free to type your question. I don't know if I can unmute you or not, but if you type it in, I'll definitely keep an eye on it. Yeah, the premise is really simple. You just have to update the image on a deployment from V1 to V2. With the V1 version of the application, if it's running, you will see me tapping my watch on a small video. Your objective is to upgrade to V2, where you will see me do a dance. Of course, everybody wants to see the dance. It's timed, you get 40 minutes, and that's it. There are very little rules in clustered, or at least there were very little rules at the start. However, things have adapted and progressed over the last couple of years. So that is clustered. Now, the number one lesson that I have learned from clustered is that people can be very, very mean. There are a lot of ways to break a cluster, and some of them are very tactical. If you were going to set your CKA exam, you would get questions or challenges or situations which may represent the real world, and those are extremely valuable. However, on clustered, we get a combination of real world breaks and the absolute malicious. And some common feedback has always been, well, but that's not real world. And well, newsflash, you never know what's going to happen in a production cluster. Unfortunately, there are bad actors on the internet, and security is paramount. And if you don't get that right, you have absolutely no idea what people are doing to your clusters. So while some of the breaks I'm going to talk about and show you may not feel like something that could affect you in a production environment, I feel that they definitely could. So I'm going to play a short video. It's 3 minutes long, but I want you to see the exasperation and frustration in me through one of these challenges.
Kubernetes has endpoints. Okay, that's after 8.
Yeah.
Let's see if Guy wants to jump in and give us a last bit of advice before we wrap this up. Are we close?
You've not looked at the configuration of Core DNS. You've looked at the pods, but not how the pods are configured to run the DNS.
We have no DNS.
Yeah.
Just keeps coming. All right. Did we miss something? Let's. I'm going to say cheat. I'm going to jump onto cluster 14 and grab the config map and see what's different.
What about?
Yeah, these are the exact same file. So he told us to look in the core DNS config, and then there was nothing wrong with the core DNS config. That's just cruel. Saying there's a few pixels. If this is a white space error in the core DNS config, I will be mighty frustrated.
It might not be a white space error. Damn.
He's mocking us now because he said your jumping back and forward showed a slight difference. This number seems arbitrary. Oh, you son of a bitch. I'm assuming there's like a weird bug, and I'm sure he's found it because he works at Skyscanner and they've got a level of scale that most people don't have. But something to do with this number going so high is maybe causing it to load an old config map in the pods or something. I don't really know. But the number being so high worries me. But we're now at the stage where I have to go and pick up my daughter. So
yeah,
I'm just going to bring Guy in to tell us what wonderful magical
what we should
crap
do.
this is. Yeah. All right, Guy. Lay it on us.
So when you were jumping back and forth between the working config and the non-working config, if you look really hard at the C in front of it in the Kubernetes config.
Oh, are you?
The C?
Yeah, it's not a C. No, it's a character which looks a lot like a C.
What?
So the Kubernetes plugin became authoritative for letter that looks like a C, luster.local.
Yeah. So what have we learned in that 3-minute clip? 1. Yeah, I can swear a lot on clustered. It gets very frustrating, and I think you can actually tell just how frustrated I was. That was a long session. That was over 2 hours, that episode. So yeah, you never know what people are going to break, and the Unicode break is one of the infamous episodes, and one that I do not remember that fondly. And to answer Bill's question in the chat, that is Gwyn, yes. No longer a gal, currently with Lumi, a former colleague of mine as well. So that was your first introduction to clustered. Like I said, there were no rules at the start. However, we started to layer them on a little bit by bit. Number 1 rule of clustered is that you are no longer allowed to use any Unicode as part of the break. There are a few more rules, but that one is now the most important forever and ever and ever. All right. There are some questions in the chat, so don't worry, I have seen them and we will get to them before the end of today's session. Now, something that's really important here. Clustered is a show that makes people feel vulnerable and can feel stressful because you are put onto a live stream in front of a live internet audience where you have no idea of the environment that you're walking into. You have no idea what the other person or the other team has done to their cluster. And you know what? You're not going to know how to fix it right away. No one ever does. A common thing that people say is, I don't know if I broke it enough. And I use the same answer every single time, is that it doesn't matter how simple or trivial your break is. The debugging experience is different for every single person. And even the fact gathering, collection of information, just to understand the existing or current landscape in the cluster takes time. Nobody comes into it and knows immediately what's wrong. And it's a byproduct of that. Failure is critical and inevitable, right? You're always going to make a mistake before you work out what's actually going on. So when we talk about failure, Kubernetes, it's inevitable, but the more that we fail, the more that we learn, and the more that we will eventually be successful. And that's very important with Kubernetes. As I said, it's a complex distributed system for running distributed. So I'm going to take you on the road to Kubernetes. The things that I learned